Did you guys know the most potent way to alchemize and heal trauma is, get this, through tantric practices? You guys, it's wild. And I can say this because I experienced it firsthand myself. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Lauren Harkness. She is an advanced certified Tantra educator and is passionate about mental, emotional, and spiritual well being. Lauren is also a plant medicine facilitator, a creative entrepreneur, Reiki master, and jewelry designer. You guys, she is the most soulful and magical medicine woman and is full of so much wisdom, it's going to knock your socks off. We discuss how and why trauma is the most alchemically healing, empowering modality for access to personal transformation, for shifting from burnout to lit up in radiance and vitality, and even expanded empathy. We discuss how trauma healing and embodiment practices unlock greater self-connection and expanded life force. We discuss the shame and stigma around the body and sexuality, how BDSM is a powerful tool for exploring boundaries, empowerment, and emotional release in a safe and shame-free environment. We explore the importance of archetypes, the dominant and submissive, in accessing new layers of self-awareness and intuitive connection. I share my personal experience of dipping my toe into this work and what that did for me. Lauren shares her personal journey of continuous transformation through this work. And we even discuss practices you can do at home. You guys, we discuss so much. It's going to be so fascinating and healing. And I'm just so excited for you guys to listen to this episode. I live for Lauren and this work. And I really hope that listening to this episode expands your perspective and gives you access to new insights and modalities to help you access your most lit up self. So without further ado, let's dive in. Are you a busy mom with a full heart, craving a sense of liberation, ease, and delicious fulfillment in mind, body, soul, and life? Welcome to Your Well Life podcast, where we help moms like you reclaim optimal well-being, align with your truest self, and find harmony in life, all with ease and flow. I'm your host, Misha Vayner, a mom of 3 who went from hustling NYC fashion girl to trauma-informed holistic health and life coach, living the slow, soul-nourishing life. Together, we'll dive into raw, unfiltered conversations that spark mindset shifts and offer practical tools for navigating motherhood, health, and relationships, all through a shame-free, trauma-informed lens. You ready, mama? Let's go. So like we were just talking about, it's while I had you do an interview with me in 2020, I think it was.
Oh my God, so long ago.
Forever ago. And I remember your video was off. I hadn't met you yet, but I was in this place of, I had heard and gotten insight around the fact that like through Tantra work, it's like the most alchemical and expansive and healing. And it was so outside of anything I knew and that I was aware of. And I was like, I asked Steph, our mutual friend, like who, and she told me you. And I was mind blown by our conversation. And then fast forward, I'm actually gonna, if it's okay, talk real quick about
Yeah,
my experience with you last summer,
totally.
because it's a perfect segue into the power of your work. Just to paint the picture, I was in a place last summer, where I could not have been more burnt out, more broken down. I'm a mom of 3. I was in the process of moving homes. And I literally had this moment where I was just like, I don't even know how it's possible to have more energy or capacity, how it's possible to be a mother of 3 children in the modern world. That was where I was. I was like, I don't have a village. I don't have family close by. And I remember this weekend where my mother was being honored. One kid at a dance recital. It was another one's birthday. It was another one's thing. And I was like, but I'm only one person. And I was so tired. And I was just like, at the same time, I was also feeling, I had a very raw, like open mother wound, like where I was feeling like I was giving, and I just felt like I just needed someone to pour into me. And I remember like running into Stephanie at a party and saying, I'm going to go to Kripalu next weekend, right after the kids get out of school. And she was like, it sounds like you might actually want to come to this retreat that my friend Lauren that you connected with is hosting, this Radiance Ecstasy retreat. Now, I actually, in that moment, I don't think I really connected. I wasn't really thinking because I was probably so burnt out. All I heard, like the words that I grabbed onto were like, there was something in it about mother womb healing or womb healing. And there was something in it like sisterhood and and I was like feeling lonely, mother wound. And I was like, said to John, my husband, I was like, so I go to this thing that I'm not really sure, but I feel called to it, or go to the thing I know that's going to work. And he was like, it doesn't seem like you need to be by yourself in the woods right now. It seems like you need to go to this thing that your friend is telling you to go to. So I went, but I actually had no idea what I was getting into.
I love it. I love it.
I was hairy as all hell. Like I hadn't shaved, I hadn't anything. I had no lingerie in tow. I was literally a walking basket case. And anyway, fast forward to getting there and being like in that place where I was so closed off, so judgy. I'm not proud of that, but it's just like how we said, like, was this the right thing? I don't know if these people are like all the things that come up. And I remember sitting in my room, like waiting for the thing. And this amazing woman, Emily, comes from Brooklyn, and she's, hey, I just got off the bus. Do you want some chocolate or whatever? And I said, and I was like, and I was like, I looked at her, she goes, are you wondering what the hell you're doing here? I was like, yeah, are you? She was like, yeah. I was like, oh, I love you. Anyway, fast forward through the weekend, and I was like, oh, I'm not alone. I remember going through experiences that felt like very edgy, but I thought to myself, I thought to myself as I was going through these experiences that we'll talk about, I was like, there is no way you're going to feel restored by the end of this weekend. You're probably going to have a cool experience. But when I tell you, fast forward to Sunday morning, while I don't even think I slept that much because I was having so much fun, I cried more than I've ever cried on that Friday night. But when I woke up on Sunday morning, I don't know if you remember, but I literally was like radiant. I was like shitting rainbows. I was like, it was like everything that I was holding, everything I had been alchemized and it was like completely gone. I felt so expanded. I felt so lit up and sparkly. And when I went home to my kids, I was like, I wanted to hear every story. I was so connected to them. I was more empathetic. I felt more connected to everyone around me. It was like one of those experiences where everything just seemed like it was now in HD. Everything felt so delicious. And I was so deeply moved by your work that and by being in your energy, because you are such like walking evidence of this work. Like you're so like you're such a soulful, like warm, nurturing, magnetic, charismatic presence that it's like you're like the work. And so I really felt like it would be I really want to talk to you about, I want to start by talking about like, how the fuck did that happen? How does Tantra alchemize so much? And if you could talk about that a little.
Oh my God, what a great question. And I love your experience and walking me through it again. I just remembered you being there, and oh yes, I watched layers of your nervous system shake off and then settle and then shake off and then settle. And I remembered like your anxiety like shifting so profoundly in 3 days. It was miraculous. And thank you so much for just acknowledging me and the value of this work, because it is true. And like you and so many women and so many humans, men, women, couples I work with, everyone get to experience the power of and the profound power of embodiment. It's like the simplest word, but that really is truly, I think, how the tantric energies inside of us alchemize through the pain body. And I'll give you like my description of how I conceptually feel that it works. But that's the true word, is just embodiment of pleasure and life force energy changes your matter. It changes who you are fundamentally. And it's like a slow and a fast process at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So conceptually, our sexual energy, or it's really, people can get hung up on the word sexual energy because it's really truly life force. It's
Yep.
the vibrational energy that animates all of life. And so one flavor of it is erotic. It's the same energy that you feel like when you look at a sunset and you feel moved to tears, or like you watch your child like doing something for the first time and your whole body is lit up. It's the same. It just has flavors that it expresses as. And so we can harness and cultivate this energy as it flows through our body. It starts at the base of our spine. And as we wake it up through breath, sound, movement, meditation, tantric practices, there are all sorts of ways to practice embodiment, like sacred, deep, powerful embodiment. So it rises through your chakras, up through your Sushumna Nadi, which is the central core of your body. We have our masculine and feminine energy. So our Ida and Pingala channels, they crisscross through the chakras. And so this concept of inner union or divine union inside of us that then expresses outwardly is this. It's truly how the life force moves through the chakras into the brain. And we can cultivate it. So if you have had no spiritual practice whatsoever, that doesn't mean that this is off limits to you. In fact, everyone can have this. This is our birthright. The beautiful, loving, sexual, spiritual energy that lives inside of us belongs to everybody. So as it rises, I believe it has two main functions. The first is that it is purifying. So it is not uncommon that as you start to wake up, that you have emotional releases or trauma that you've been working on that has been expressed through like unconscious patterns of behavior begin to be present. And we can start to bring our life force into these places of blocked energy in our body. And we can do that. And that can start to purify or bring to the surface what's ready to heal and help it move through our system. And then the second function is that it awakens the higher consciousness of the chakras. So that means we can harness it to co-create with life, the life of our dreams. And I mean that in a very real, practical way, not just an esoteric way, that this work really does change your life for the better. And you can utilize this energy with consciousness and intention towards putting it towards your goals and how you would like your life to expand. And it becomes this very beautiful dance of kind of sovereignty and connection with spirit and matter. So that's one way of speaking it.
Yeah, no, I love that because two things really spoke to me in that. First and foremost, it's so true when you say that it's embodiment. And while it sounds so like basic, it's so profound because most of us aren't embodied. Most of us haven't really been taught what is even going on below our neck. And that's no fault of ours. It's just the way that we have been conditioned. And so really, when you do have that access to really understanding and being able to connect with and feel what is happening, you really, it's like a whole new, it's like if you never knew the rest of the world existed, you're like, oh my God, like it's like a whole other world opens up to you. And then also I feel it sounds to me like, okay, so trauma healing, it's okay. You have this stuck charge from unprocessed stress and experiences where you were shamed or disconnected parts of yourself. You have this stuck charge in various parts of our body that are impacting our physiology, that are in various parts of our system. And while you can like do mindset work and you can do somatics to it, but to slowly discharge it and process it over time, it feels like Tantra accelerates it because it sounds to me like by accessing the life force, it's like more rapidly and like powerfully discharging that charge in a way, accelerates it in this really profound way that it like therefore alchemizes it. And it also at the same time helps to channel this like beautiful like this radiance, that like this ecstasy that you like talk about, like that you actually it's not just dislodging it and then you are the same. It's like you're also now tapping into this, what is it? It's like magic. It's
Yeah.
right. It's,
yeah. It's practical magic.
right. And people think it's silly, but I really, and I don't, and that's the thing too, is like me as somebody who also feels like I do a lot of the work, but at the same time, until I actually experienced it, I didn't understand. You can't understand the level of which you can go until you actually feel it. Okay. So then I guess the next thing I wanted to talk about was another one of the edges I tapped into that weekend was actually, do we want to go here or there? Actually, first, can we first talk about, so the first night, I think you guided us through a peaking practice, if I'm not mistaken. And that was what I found was really interesting about that was, I'm just looking at this note I had, I was that this concept, and I think I heard you that night and maybe in other times that I'd been in a container with you or whatever, this concept of, and I'm gonna fuck it up while I say it, but it's like through extending this like arc or this like place, it's like strengthening some sort of discipline and yielding you this even more powerful release and joy at the end. I don't know. Can you speak to what peaking is and how that to that piece?
Yeah, what a great. Can you say what you said again? Because it's such a good way of describing it.
Oh, thank you. I thought it was opposite. Thanks. That makes me feel good. So I think I was saying how through extending the arc of the like holding of that instead of allowing yourself to hit that ejaculation or
Yeah.
to hold that middle ground, it helps you strengthen the sort of like discipline and therefore have a more yield more powerful joy and like impact at the end.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so yes, extended orgasm is basically expanding your range of how much you can feel, which sensitizes you to more sensation, to more pleasure, to more emotionality and movement of emotions. And when we start to use the breath and sound at the same time, we're essentially inhaling our life force energy from the root to the crown, letting it wash down as we exhale. And it starts to activate the Kundalini, which basically looks like waves through the spine. And when you are using breath, sound, and movement while stimulating yourself sexually and not focusing on achieving a goal of climax, but instead riding these waves, the waves become like this. And you're feeling more in these kind of outer ranges than you usually feel, which is if you're habituated to your climax, you have a certain range. Maybe you have great orgasms, which is awesome. Maybe you have multiple orgasms, which is awesome. There's still a habitual plane that you're feeling. And so when we do practices to extend the pleasure and to ride the waves, instead of having this kind of action, you're going like this. And the more you practice it, we are human animals. So we can create grooves of pleasure, grooves of ecstasy. We create new neural pathways of pleasure because we have neural plasticity in our brain. And the 4 nerve pathways of pleasure, 3 of them go through the spine into the brain to the sensory cortex. And then one of them, which is, I think, a really interesting nerve pathway that I'd love to study more about, is the vagus nerve. It starts inside of our pelvis, but it comes up in 2 branches on the front side of our body, crisscrossing through different nerve plexuses and organs, through our nipples, through our throat, and into our brain behind our ears. And it not only stimulates pleasure, creating new neural plasticity, new neural pathways of pleasure, but it also stimulates a parasympathetic response in the nervous system, which resets your nervous system. So that's the key piece, I think, for the alchemy part, which is we bring the pleasure up and maybe we have an emotional release because we're not trying to compartmentalize things anymore. We're letting our feeling be these waves. Pleasure, ecstasy, sadness, grief, rage, all of it is welcome. And you're right about the power of it because it's like a volcano. We're just adding that much pressure and power behind what we're trying to clear. And then not only through peaking practice, most often you don't climax, although sometimes you do, the orgasmic waves move the stuck energy and bring it into peace, bring you into resetting your nervous system, which over time is very grounding and can help you really change your nervous system habits. So if you do tantric practice, like you said, with a discipline on a daily or every other day basis, you are really changing the grooves of the nerve pathways and how they're working and operating in your life, which changes everything.
Hey mama, imagine if healing your stress patterns could change everything. Because it can. Whether it's reacting in ways you don't recognize, people pleasing, or overthinking, these patterns stem from unresolved trauma stored in your body. They create chronic stress, impacting your health, relationships, and how you show up in life. That's why I created the Align and Thrive Workbook, a free 5-day mini training designed to help you heal at the root. You'll learn what trauma is and how it's showing up in your body and life. You'll be guided through a proven 5-step process to heal and rewire these patterns, shifting from reactive and overwhelmed to aligned and in flow. You'll get a comprehensive workbook filled with practices and journal prompts to help you implement this work starting now. It's truly transformational. It's what I wish I had when I was struggling on my journey, and it's completely free. Download your Align and Thrive workbook for free today. Head to www.mishavayner.com/workbook and let's begin this journey together. You can also click on the link in the show notes and grab it today. Yes, it sounds to me like this practice both like expands and diversifies your access to pleasure and like the
Yes.
types, and it's so you have this whole it, and so therefore even just by default in the nature of that alone, aside from the alchemy, you're like available to so much more pleasure, and that literally changes like your entire being, like why you're like a walking like goddess. And then also when you were talking about the wave riding of the different emotions, it just reminds me of like how it's how healthy and important that practice is, because okay, we think about like going to the gym every day as being healthy and whatever, but we often forget that to build like a healthy nervous system we need that resilience and that pendulation, because when we can't be stuck at one note, and we often, I feel like there's not enough awareness around that, and it sounds to me like this is a whole new level of which you can both heal and strengthen, like almost not beyond strengthen, it's almost like have the most powerfully healthy nervous system because you're doing this pendulation work and it's also feels good.
Yeah.
Like it feels good. And then I think that, by the way, it's noticed that edge that I think, I actually wonder what your pleasure edge is. I don't even know if you have one. Do you have?
It keeps getting bigger. That's what I always love to say to people too. Like the more you practice this, like you go through sexual/spiritual awakenings. And I've probably had 6 or 7 major awakenings since I started doing these practices. And on a daily basis, you are expanding your range of how much you can feel.
Oh yeah, no, because
So there is no ceiling, like it keeps going.
Which is wild. It's such an exciting thing to think about. But given the state I was in, on top of the fact that this was new to me, on top of, I think also just on top of a lifetime of all the things, I remember feeling so all the shit came up when I was in the room being invited into this in the
Yeah.
best way,
Yeah.
but it did. Like
Of course.
and I was like, I noticed how uncomfortable it was for me to connect with my own body. in a safe space, which I thought was just like, I wanted to get to this later, but I'll just touch on it now with you, in that there's so much shame and there's such a stigma around the thing that should be like, that is like why we're all here.
Totally.
In our own bodies.
Yeah.
Like, what is even happening? And so I don't know. I don't know if you have any feelings or thoughts on like how to release anything that about around releasing that stigma and shame, but it's definitely not serving us.
No, it is definitely not serving us. That's a great question. And I love how you put it, because it's true. The kind of the kind of witchy part of me feels, of course, the powers that be would shame and stigmatize such a powerful force of energy, because it is available to everyone and it can change lives and it can make people feel in their power and in their purpose and in their body in a really revolutionary way. The sacred rebel inside of me likes to help people by saying, this is a revolutionary act to choose your pleasure and to focus on your aliveness and to choose to be in your body and to bring discomfort and eros together. So it's not like we have to try and pretend, because that really is a lot of how we pattern, is we feel the shame and then we busy ourselves by working or like overeating or like getting into addictive behaviors. There's so many ways to stay numb and unconscious to how we're avoiding feeling in our body. And so when we can bring, okay, hi shame, like breaking it down into sensation is one of the ways I work with people. The shame might be like a hot flush through your chest. So if we start to bring our attention to the sensation where the shame is being felt, bring our breath and our sound there, and start to bring mindfulness and attention to the block and the sensation of the block rather than the story of the block, it can start to open up and shift. And so that is really, it is courageous to do this work. It's courageous to open the door, because there's so much unknown there and so much trauma. Honestly, people have experienced a lot of trauma in their sexual lives.
Yeah. No, first of all, you like, after I said it, I was like, what are you even saying? What is you're like a walking permission slip for this work, and you've dedicated your life to it. So how am I even asking that question? I was like, but anyway, moving on. And one more thing I want to say on that is when you spoke to the shame that someone may feel and how attuning to it and connecting with it is, while it sounds so simple, it's the most powerful thing, because that's why it's there. It never got that resonance, and just by being with it. And I think that actually then speaks to your work, because the more intimacy that we can access, the more attunement we get, therefore the more alchemy we get. So it's just, I don't know, it just made me think of that. So something else I wanted to talk to you about from your retreat, and if you're doing it again this year, everybody needs to run.
I am. It's in July. It's in July.
Okay. When you know the dates, do you know the dates?
Yeah, it's like the 25th to the 27th.
Okay. I'm going to make a note too.
Okay, good.
But okay. So the next thing I want to talk about was my amazing experience with the BDSM and Kink workshop on Saturday. And it was so interesting because while I had, again, heard how it gives you access to being more clear with your boundaries and accessing new levels of empowerment and things like that, until I was actually in that space of, and if it's okay, I'm just going to talk quickly about experience.
Yeah, go for it.
It was really interesting because, okay, like I said, I hadn't shaved. I was a wildebeest. I'm Indian. So I'm like 10 times more hairy than everyone. And I didn't bring any lingerie. And so I'm like in this room already vulnerable. It was like past my bedtime because I go to sleep at 9:00. It was like 10:00 at night. I was half asleep and I was like not looking pretty. And this beautiful goddess friend of Lauren's comes and she's like the cutest thing of all time. And anyway, she's guiding us through. There it is.
Yeah.
And She looked amazing. And I was like, oh God, everyone came in lingerie. And which you don't have to her workshop because I'm evidence, but you have a partner, and she was guiding us through practices where one of you, at one point, one of you is the dom and the other one's the sub, and then the other way. And initially I was like I said, how I already felt. But then on top of it, I was like, I think I just assumed that I would want to be the sub and I would enjoy that better. And I was just like, I'm lazy. I don't know. I don't want to do anything. And first of all, in that experience, what was cool was, even though, I think I did that first. I don't remember what I did first, but in that experience, I remember what I found to be cool was whatever it was that I thought I would have liked was not what I would have liked. And I kept having to find my ways of being clear about what I did want and what I didn't, and realizing that I actually had so much to learn about myself, and that it was actually quite cool to recognize that there was so many other ways to feel and to connect and to be in relationship, that I guess there were so many other ways to understand how to feel good and how to receive, that I had never even contemplated before. I was finding myself thinking I wanted to be like hit this one way, but not liking it and saying I want this other, and then finding myself telling that person I wanted that. And I was like, who am I? And then when I was in the up role, that was where my real, I don't even know, came out. And my partner was Alex, and she was like, have you done this before? Because and I was like, no. But what I realized was, it was as if a new level of me had come in, and it wasn't even me. It was like this other energy. It was like almost like I'd been possessed. And it was like this, it was all through intuition. I wasn't in my head at all. And that was really cool, because she was like, how do you know? I didn't even know I knew that was exactly what I want. And I was like, wow, I've got really intuitive capabilities, and I'm so fucking good. And I felt not even like, it wasn't even in a controlling feeling. It was like the most, I don't know, it was this insanely lit up feeling to be able
to give.
Yes, to give.
Yes.
To be a source of someone else's joy, or whatever the right word is. But so in that experience, it was like, even though I could have understood it cognitively, I actually felt a whole new, like, I to the point that I think I came to after, I was like, I think I want to study this I wanted to join your
yes.
And I chickened out because I was moving and all the things. But anyway, we'll get there. But yes, so I want to hear from you, because I know that you do a lot of this work around, if you could just explain how this work really helps people with boundary work and finding a new sense of empowerment.
Oh, great question. I loved hearing your experience too. What you were describing when you stepped into your dom was as an archetype, because both the dominant archetype and the submissive archetype have energetic frequencies that when you embody them, they are there with you, guiding you. And so submissive states are often about receiving, about accessing communication, how to say yes and no, how to communicate in the moment. But it's really a like internal receptive space. And then the dom archetype is a giving role. It really is. And you know this from being a mom, like holding space for people, nurturing them, giving them what they need and want is deeply fulfilling. And when you feel like you're in your power doing it, it's a bonus. BDSM in general is a beautiful art form. It's a beautiful art form, a theatrical art form, where people get to go into their fantasies and their shadows in the subspace by asking for what they want and they need from their dom. And the dom gets to create this kind of tapestry of theater, creating a scene or a ritual that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that kind of the container of having a ritual space around it, beginning, middle, and an end, creates a lot of safety for the person who's receiving to explore and to expand. So it is very empowering. Both sides are very empowering. A lot of people come into BDSM work and discover maybe in their life, they might let people walk all over them, or they have patterns where they don't speak up, or they feel like they're at the mercy of life. And when they get into a submissive state, there's often a lot of erotic charge in the places where we feel powerless in our life, which can be very confronting to discover that, oh my gosh, I might actually being a bit masochistic, or I might actually like feeling punished. And when I consciously choose to go there, there's a lot of release that can happen. But also, the submissive gets to learn that they have a voice and that they can say no and stop and use their safe word anytime they need to. So it's incredibly empowering also to know your edges and to know your limits and to know that you can stop something at any time, which when we have trauma, we didn't know that we could, or we didn't have the skills, or we didn't know enough to say no, or someone was overpowering us. Consensual non-consent is one part of BDSM play, but really even in the simple moment of saying yellow or red or stop, a submissive feels that they get to go back in time really and repattern things from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the dominant position, it's really fun to be able to wield your power and to watch the impact that you have on someone, to watch someone's body go into orgasmic release, or to have a catharsis if they need to cry, and to be the one kind of holding that for them is really profoundly fulfilling.
It really is. There's no words. I remember as you were talking, it came to me. One of the things that moved me the most, and I don't think this could be highlighted enough, that it really is, because I feel like the sort of, I don't know, the stigma or the sense is that it wouldn't be shame-free or safe, but it actually is the most shame-free and safe space. And I think that is so important, because I think that, like, when you mentioned that there are parts of us that we, where we couldn't express things that we liked, that we feel shame around. And in this container, you can, and you can do it in a place where there's already set guidelines and there's a container around it to align with that. It allows you, like we were talking about before with the attunement, when you meet that part that feels the shame, it helps to alchemize it. And so I think that, like, that, and also the fact that when oftentimes we don't have this, it's like also like it's an embodied expression of the things that you just like often conscious, you might talk about it in therapy, or you might, but this is like a full-on body, like expelling of all of it. And something else, tell me if this is way off, but something that keeps coming to me regarding the dom piece is two things. I have this like feeling that it's like, it feels like, this is going to sound crazy, but you almost feel a little bit like godlike in it. Do you know what I mean? Where it's, and the first time we were talking a little bit ago, it was like, it helped me. You know how when people say men in general that are, when they're in the masculine, very much want to be the caretaker, or not the caretaker, the like, whatever, that type of role.
Yeah.
And that's what feels good to them. And I feel like it's like you get a sense of that energy of being in that archetypal masculine role that you may not have access to in your mothering role every day, or in
Yeah.
your, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you portal into a new land.
Yeah, you get to be the driver.
Yeah, it's so freaking cool. Okay, that was amazing. And then I want to talk about, if you're comfortable, and then like, how did you find this work, and what has been, yeah, what gave you the courage to step into it, given, and I know the story, but I want to share if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, what gave you the courage to step into it, knowing how stigmatized it is?
Wow, that's a good question. The really frank answer is I got a divine assignment and I couldn't say no.
I love it.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes spirit like works in that way. Like I I was first exploring for my own reasons because I couldn't orgasm with people. I had sexual trauma from around 17 to 24. And then recently, not recently, in the past several years, discovered a very early at 4 and 5 sexual trauma. And that's so impactful to how people relate. And sadly, there are so many people who've experienced sexual trauma So I was really exploring for myself because I felt broken. I felt like everyone else knew what they were doing. And here I was, couldn't orgasm, was like obsessing over men who didn't like me. Like it was all sorts of messy in my romantic life. And so I started to study because I knew there was something that I didn't know that I needed to know. And I had all this sexual energy, a lot of sexual energy. And a lot of times, if someone has early childhood sexual trauma, they have early sexualization, and so their body is awake. And that was true for me. And it was confusing to be a teenage girl and to have all of this kind of erotic energy and not know what to do with it. So it was by necessity that I started studying. And then as I began to wake up and I had my first sexual awakening through peaking practice with myself that turned me from anorgasmic to being able to have orgasmic states by choice and at will, which was hugely empowering for me. Oh my God, it was like a light bulb went off. And so I just kept studying, and people started coming to me to ask me questions about sex. So I was already starting to coach. But when I found Tantra and when I gave my first hands on session, that was when it clicked and I got the divine assignment. Like I was working on someone. I do offer a Dakini training for women, which you know about, but that was what I was doing. I was embodying the Dakini archetype, which is a priestess archetype that pours love into someone's body to engender wholeness. And often there may be cathartic release involved. And so I was giving my first session and I just had had my eyes closed, and it was like working on someone's hip, like deep in the kind of glute muscle. And they started to cry. And it was like something inside of me clicked and I just knew what to do. I knew to continue pushing the person's hip to get them to cry more. I was saying things that like wasn't coming from my head. What you were describing with the Dom archetype, the Dakini archetype is similar, where it's like a flow state that you actually can turn on and off, especially when you're working with someone. And that came into my body and I felt, wow, something is guiding me here. And it was so meaningful to see the person's face afterwards and how clear they were and how released they were and how loved they felt. And that was really the turning point for me, where I was like, oh, I think I'm meant to do this. I knew there was a part of my purpose that I hadn't reached yet. I was a jewelry designer when I found Tantra, and I love my jewelry design, but there was something, there was like an itch inside of me. Like I knew there was more. And that clicked in. So then I started working one-on-one with people for a number of years. And then I started teaching classes, and now I'm doing both. I work with people privately, and I also teach all the way around, all the way around the world.
You really,
Yeah.
oh my God, you're like a true like medicine woman, because even while, first of all, I just love the sort of like uniqueness and the breadth of the types of offerings you have, that I feel like you have things that allow someone to come in at a level like me, where I could tap my toe in, and then also all the way to full on training. And
Yeah.
you have them scattered all over. And then you also have online programs and
Yeah.
stuff. So I just think that you have done such an incredible job of channeling your magic into such like helpful work for so many people. I could really cry. I feel like,
Aww.
honestly, like I talk to Alina here and there, and I always say, you're this, we both say that if you're this person that you just have this like random things, you don't even know this, but like random things or crossroads we're in or things, whatever. I feel like Lauren would just, she's the person to hold this. Like you are this person that can hold anyone through anything with such love and also help guide them. And I think what it is that your approach to giving people the healing is so personal, but also like you're able to get people through things in a way that doesn't feel like aggressive or no, like intense. There's just like nurturing and ease. And you're also just, oh, you're so amazing. I don't even know.
Aww.
I really love you so much.
I
And
love you too.
so I wanted to ask a couple of like closing questions.
Yeah.
Well, actually, one is there, if you wanted to, if somebody was like, okay, like I'm at home, I'm intrigued by this work, but I'm like also a little nervous. Like, what's one like sort of practice or something that you might suggest that they do to just start to tap into what's possible for them?
Oh, great question. I have a ton of free meditations in the content library of my website.
Oh,
So
great.
I would direct them there, like even just starting to meditate 10 minutes a day with breath, sound, and movement. That is, it goes such a long way. Baby steps get you really far.
Yeah. In fact, that I just shared that quote today, like James Clear from Atomic Habits, or he's just, you do 1% each day, 36%, like just focus on the little things. So I love that
Yes.
feedback. Okay. What's one thing that's lighting you up right now in your life
Ooh,
that's helping you feel aligned and in flow?
I just really love my relationship. I really am so grateful to have found a partner where we're like in it for the long haul through the challenges and the good and through the real. It's so
Yeah.
nourishing. Yeah, I love it.
Your relationship with your partner is one of the most beautiful things I've ever
Oh,
witnessed. He's incredible. You're both incredible. Yeah.
thank
And I
you.
think that's also evidence to anyone listening that I feel like just you guys have, like you said, you've walked through so much together and you continue to like come back. I just love it.
Yeah.
I remember that story you told us about. What was it when you when you were in that break and he was, I don't know, somewhere far and you weren't sure if he was coming back and you were like, did that practice that kind of reminds me of the same analogy of the holding the line where did you tie yourself up or do you know what?
Yes. Yes, I would self-tie during the pandemic and tie myself and then do laundry, or I was edging, actually doing pleasure
Yes.
practices while I was like attempting
Yearning.
not to yearn. Really, I was trying
Oh,
to find my own contentment inside.
which was the most transformational thing for you. Like it gave
Yes.
you a new sense of, because then when you went back, you said you now felt more secure with or without anybody, which
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's so cool. It's just another way of which like all the things that you do all lead back to like empowerment. And then lastly, looking back, what's one thing you wish you had known earlier on your healing journey?
The word no.
Oh, that's such a good answer. I love that. Amen to that. Ditto.
Yes.
My God, yes. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been such a joy to be with you, always.
And I would love do you want to tell the listeners where they can, some things coming up and yeah, where they can find you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. My website is laurenharkness.com. My Instagram is sensual alchemistress. And all of my classes can be found on my website under upcoming live workshops and events. And then I also have some pre-recorded classes, which is another great way to begin. You can find that all on my website. My partner and I work with couples. So we have a couples weekend called Union. We have one at the end of January and one that will be scheduled later in 2025. I have a Dakini training for female practitioners who wish to follow the tantric path. I have another BDSM practitioner training with my colleague Omrupani called Modern Priestess of Eros. And if someone is really interested, if you're a woman and you're really interested in diving deep, erotic sovereignty is a great foundational place to start on your personal journey. But I have tons of classes and events and would love to see you at any of them.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh,
You
and
guys,
the Radiant
yeah,
Ecstasy Festival. I forgot about that. That's at the end of July.
you guys, you do not want to miss it. If you're in like the tri-state area, definitely. And also, I just want to say, like, it's get on her list and just dabble and start to feel into it because when you connect with her energy and her emails, they're so soulful and she has there's nothing to fear. I know it can sound like very edgy and also it's a very nurturing, healing, beautiful experience. And so just get on her list, follow her, and yeah, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. I love
I
you.
love you so much.
All right, friends, what'd you think? I really hope you enjoyed listening and got value from this episode of Your Well Life. If you did, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review so we can spread the word to more mamas who can benefit from this content. It's truly my deepest mission to help as many mamas out there feel empowered, aligned, and in flow in their bodies and lives through this podcast. And even just sharing with one friend who you think can benefit helps. Want more from me? Well, then don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you can get notified each time a new episode drops. Oh, and make sure to get on my newsletter list where I send out weekly emails to support, nourish, and inspire you. And follow me on Instagram, where I'm the most active and share behind the scenes of my day-to-day life and insights I have along the way. I'm at Misha Vayner. I'm truly so grateful that you chose to spend your time with me and really hope to have you join along next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.